In a galaxy rife with ancient rivalries, Ambassador Douglas Ward arrives on Andor to bridge a divide between two worlds. What begins as a quest for peace transforms into a perilous dance of diplomacy, where every choice could spark war or forge unity. In a struggle between hope and distrust, how far will one go when the stakes are humanity's future? Don't forget to subscribe. 91% of viewers enjoy our content but forget to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with our daily sci-fi stories and support a dedicated team of storytellers and content creators who rely on this as their livelihood. Underneath the luminescent skies of Andor, Douglas Ward felt the weight of expectations pressing down on him like a heavy shroud. As he stepped off the ramp of the Starfire, a sleek spacecraft shimmering like liquid metal, the vibrant landscape enveloped him in a kaleidoscope of colors. Bioluminescent flora danced gently in the soft breeze, their iridescent hues reflecting the light from the two suns casting a warm glow over the land. Distant mountain ranges, their peaks kissed by the clouds, cut across the horizon like jagged teeth, a reminder of the raw beauty and uncharted territories of this alien world. His heart hammered in his chest, a flicker of hope mingling with the tight knot of anxiety twisting in his stomach. "Welcome to Andor, Earth Envoy," a voice called out, piercing through his thoughts. He turned to see Fornax, an Andorian with smooth, azure skin that glimmered almost opalescent under the luminous glow of her surroundings. Her expressive eyes sparkled like distant stars, full of warmth yet tinged with the burden of history. Fornax's lithe frame emanated a calm confidence as she extended her hand, adorned with delicate, elongated fingers. "I am honored to be your liaison." "Thank you, Fornax," Douglas managed to reply, forcing a smile despite the fluttering in his stomach. "I hope we can achieve great things here." His eyes scanned the foreign landscape, taking in the strange yet captivating beauty that lay before him. As they began the journey towards the Andorian embassy, Fornax described the nuanced traditions of her people, her voice a melodic cadence that contrasted with the tension hanging in the air. "Our cultures have been at odds for too long, Mr. Ward. Many believe that peace is impossible," she remarked, her tone laced with frustration and sorrow for her people's tumultuous past. "I'm here to change that perception," Douglas asserted, meeting her gaze with determination. "But I can't do it alone." Inside, he was acutely aware of the stakes. The fragile peace was like a finely spun web that could unravel at any moment. As they navigated the sprawling thoroughfares, Douglas couldn't help but notice the wonders surrounding him. Majestic trees towered overhead, their branches adorned with luminescent vines that twinkled like stars in the night sky. The air was filled with exotic fragrances that played tricks on his senses, sweet and earthy, yet utterly unlike anything he'd ever experienced on Earth. What neither of them realized was that the heavy tension of the atmosphere was more than just diplomatic unease. It was a prelude to the trials they would face together. As they approached the grand entrance of the embassy, a structure reminiscent of a giant seashell with swirling patterns etched across its surface, Douglas clenched his fists. This was not just a mission, it was a gauntlet. Entering the embassy, Douglas was met with the elegant architecture that seemed to pulse with life. Curved walls breathed an energy that resonated with his very soul. However, the tension was palpable. An undercurrent of distrust surged through the air. The room was filled with Andorians of varying shades of blue and green, their eyes focused on him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Please, take a seat." Fornax gestured to a low, luminous table surrounded by cushions that appeared to float slightly above the ground. "We have much to discuss." The grand hall of the Andorian embassy loomed large, its ceiling stretching into the heights of a luminous arch. Columns carved from vivid blue crystal refracted light in a dance of colors, casting an ethereal glow across the vast space. It was within this majestic realm that Douglas Ward felt the weight of history pressing against him, a pressure that came not just from his mission, but from the centuries-old rivalries etched into the very fabric of the Andorian race. Across from him sat Ambassador Th, a colossal figure draped in obsidian robes that seemed to absorb the light of the room. His skin was a deep shade of indigo, marked with glimmering scars that told stories of battles fought and resilience tested. These eyes, sharp and predatory, narrowed as he regarded Douglas with palpable disdain. He could feel every cold gaze that scrutinized him from the Andorian council seated behind their austere marshal. Each unyielding stare a reminder of how grossly mismatched he was in stature and authority. Fierce voice rumbled through the hall like thunder. "Your presence here is unworthy of our attention, Earthling." The atmosphere thickened with tension, a palpable quiet settling over the assembly like a storm gathering on the horizon. Douglas took a deep breath, forcing his nerves to stabilize. He gripped the edge of the conference table, feeling the cool surface against his palms, grounding him. "I'm not here to steal anything from you, Ambassador. I merely seek to understand and to build bridges." He attempted to infuse sincerity into his voice, hoping it would penetrate the defenses surrounding Thea's mistrust. Beside him, Fornax shifted slightly, her presence a faint yet warm glow amidst the icy demeanor of her fellow Andorians. Her smooth blue skin contrasted starkly with Thea's rigid formality, and her eyes, filled with a mixture of alarm and hope, flitted between Douglas and TH. "Please, TH," she pleaded, her voice gentle yet firm, "give him a chance. This is our opportunity for peace." The ambassador's brows furrowed deeply, as if grappling with the very idea of cooperation put forth before him. "Peace?" he scoffed, the word dripping with skepticism. "What do you know of peace, Earthling? Your world seethes with conflict. You bring your divisive ways into our realm, and for what?" 1. Douglas clenched his jaw, refusing to be distracted by the weight of Thea's accusations. "I am here because our worlds face a common threat, a more nebulous danger that doesn't abide by the lines that divide our peoples." His eyes met Thea's unwavering glare. "A chance for unity is one worth fighting for." Yet the discussions rapidly devolved, spiraling into disputes that reflected age-old prejudices. Stories of betrayals, both real and imagined, spilled forth, each narrative laced with animosity. Douglas couldn't shake the mounting sense of helplessness. Every time he attempted to lay the groundwork for an alliance, a fog of misunderstanding smothered the effort before it could take root. With the formalities exhausted and tempers flaring, the meeting broke for a recess. The bustle of voices filled the expansive hall as delegates shuffled about, clattering their datapads and furrowing brows. Douglas sidled up to Fornax, who stood pensively, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Why is this so difficult?" he whispered, the frustration oozing from him like steam from a boiling pot. "Can't they see the bigger picture?" Fornax sighed deeply, the weight of numerous cultural complexities mirrored in her expression. "Sometimes, it's not about the big picture, Douglas," she replied softly, her eyes sparkling with empathy. "It's about trust. They have to believe in you first." Quote, the silence that followed settled thickly around them. Douglas's heart ached with the reality of what he faced. Not just an ambassador's resistance, but the deep-rooted fractiousness of an entire species. In this moment, they stood as embers of hope amidst raging storms of division. As the recess dragged on, Douglas felt the pulse of tension resonate in the air. He leaned against a crystal pillar, staring into the mosaic of colors it formed, grappling with an almost insurmountable burden. He knew the stakes. If he failed to broker a peace, the consequences could spark a conflict that would engulf not just Andor, but the broader galaxy, stretching far beyond the limits of human comprehension. Suddenly, a voice broke through his concentration. It was Fornax again, her brow furrowing with concern. "Douglas, we must change our approach. Perhaps we should share stories of our people, our histories." He looked at her, confused. "Stories? Yes," she affirmed, her eyes brightening, enthusiasm returning. "Stories connect us. They weave a tapestry of shared experiences. Perhaps if you share your memories and tales from Earth, it can bridge that gap of misunderstanding." The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. "You think they'd care about my childhood stories?" Fornax chuckled softly. "More than you know. They will see you as a human, not just an envoy. It will be a step towards building trust. Nodding. A spark ignited within him. Perhaps she was right. Maybe the humanity he took for granted could be the very tool to unearth empathy in the hearts of the Andorians. With rejuvenated determination, Douglas re-entered the Grand Hall, its crystal columns towering over him like ancient guardians. As he stepped back to the forefront, ready to embrace the power of storytelling, the murmurs of discontent met him like a wall, cold yet crackable. "Ambassador T.H.," he began, his voice steady, but laced with vulnerability. "I come from a world where we have faced many struggles, just as you have. I want to share a story that has shaped who I am." As Douglas poured his heart into the retelling of his life, weaving in memories of human resilience and shared laughter, he watched for the flickers of intrigue among the Andorian faces. The steady lines of Tiura's expression softened just a fraction, though the mistrust remained a thick barrier. Yet, in Fornax's supportive gaze, he felt the warmth forge small connections. But just as the tide seemed to sway in their favor, the air in the hall shifted again. The doors burst open, and a flurry of delegates entered, their expressions painted with urgency. An advisor dashed forward, breathless. "Ambassador T.H., there have been reports of disturbances across the border. Something is amiss." An electric thrill of dread danced in the air. Douglas's heart raced. What now? The glimmer of hope he had begun to kindle felt dangerously close to being snuffed out. "What is the nature of the disturbance?" T.H. demanded, his brows furrowing deeply, instantly reassuming his authoritative stance. The air in the Grand Embassy remained thick with tension. As the weight of negotiations pressed down on Douglas Ward, the sense of foreboding only deepened. The vibrant hues of Andor's sky faded into twilight outside, casting long shadows on the polished marble floors where they held their discussions. Douglas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes scanning the ornate hall adorned with intricate carvings of Andorian legends. "What if it's not just misunderstandings?" he murmured to Fornax one evening as they pored over blueprints of the embassy's security protocols. Fornax, her azure skin glowing dimly under the artificial lights, looked grave. "Sabotage is unheard of in our culture," she replied, her expressive features clouding with concern. "But we might need to revise that perspective." As they delved deeper, they uncovered a troubling pattern, a series of carefully orchestrated accidents that all pointed to an external orchestrator. A transport vehicle had veered off course, crashing into the ceremonial plaza. Power outages had plagued their most critical discussions, creating opportunities for dissent. Each incident seemed calculated to incite fear and create distrust. "We need to act swiftly," Douglas asserted, slamming his fist on the table, sending holographic projections sprawling across the surface. "I'll review the security footage again. Someone must have slipped through the cracks." Fornax leaned closer, her eyes fierce. "The Romulans are notorious for this kind of cloak-and-dagger work. They would love nothing more than to see our alliance crumble." "Whew." Douglas met her gaze. "Then we can't show weakness. We must uncover the truth before they sabotage our efforts completely." As night enveloped Andor, they planned to meet under the celestial canopy of the Grove of Stars, an ancient site that held deep significance for both races. The bioluminescent flora illuminated their path, casting a gentle glow reminiscent of fallen stars scattered across a tranquil lake. The grove hummed with the whispers of the past, the air rich with the fragrance of blooming luminescent flowers. As Douglas and Fornax arrived, they found solace within the embrace of nature. Multicolored plants danced in the breeze, their light creating a mesmerizing display that enveloped them in a veil of serenity amidst the growing chaos. "Here, we can think freely," Fornax said softly, her emotions palpable as she took in the sacredness of the location. She knelt, pressing her palm against the cool soil, drawing strength from the ancient roots. "This place reminds me of the resilience of my people." Douglas knelt beside her, heart pounding, not just from the gravity of their situation, but from an overwhelming connection he felt with her in that moment. "We'll protect it," he promised, voice low but firm. "Not just this grove, but everything it stands for." Sometimes, it feels we are caught in the machinery of fate, Fornax said, her eyes following the shimmering glow of a passing alien moth, as if we're merely pieces on a board manipulated by unseen forces. Douglas turned to her, his voice steady. Then we fight against it. We fight for our worlds. In the embrace of the grove, the shadows ceased to feel as ominous, and they dared to share dreams, visions of a united galaxy, and the possibilities that thrummed in the night air, binding them closer as allies and something more. But their reprieve from the mounting pressure was short-lived. A sharp beeping emanated from his communicator, demanding his attention. Viewing the alert, an unfamiliar urgency clawed at his gut. An emergency signal triggered within the embassy. "Something's wrong," Douglas muttered, glancing up at Fornax. The serene atmosphere shattered like glass, and they were thrust back into their grim reality. He activated the communicator. "This is Ward. Report!" "Ambassador Ward!" the voice on the other end crackled. Panic laced their speech. "We have reason to believe a breach has occurred. There are unidentified beings in the eastern corridor. We need." Static engulfed the transmission, followed by an eerie silence. "Let's go," Douglas exclaimed, instinct taking over as he sprinted through the grove, with Fornax at his heels, the bioluminescent plants casting frantic shadows around them. As they approached the embassy, the haunting echoes of distant explosions permeated the air, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The beauty of the night was replaced by chaos. Windows shattered, and the sound of laser fire echoed through the corridors. Douglas's heart raced. The Romulans had struck earlier than they anticipated. "Stay close," he shouted, adrenaline spurring him forward. He activated his communicator, trying to restore contact. "We need augmented security." Just as he and Fornax reached the threshold of the embassy, an explosion rippled through the building, knocking them off their feet. Dust and debris filled the space around them, making it hard to see. Desperation surged through him as he scrambled to his feet, scanning the surroundings. "Fornax, we need to find shelter," he called, pushing through the haze to the nearest doorway. The hall twisted in abstraction before them, shades of light battling through flames and smoke. Fornax followed closely, almost instinctually, grounding him amidst the chaos. "There's a safe room in the West Wing," she yelled, her voice cutting through the disarray. "We must protect the core of the negotiations." Before they could move further, two Romulan soldiers materialized, their dark uniforms contrasting sharply against the fiery backdrop. They moved with lethal grace, weapons drawn, silhouetted against the inferno growing in the heart of the embassy. "Stay behind me," Douglas commanded, instinctively throwing himself in front of Fornax. A volley of shots rang out, the air crackling with energy as Douglas returned fire, feeling the pulse of combat igniting the fusion of fear and determination within him. Glancing back, he caught Fornax's gaze, defiant and resolute, lending strength to his resolve. She dashed forward, dodging underneath the blast that narrowly missed her. "I'll disrupt their formation," Fornax declared, her arms outstretched. Suddenly, her skin shimmered, glowing with ethereal light. In that moment, she harnessed her energy, propelling a surge of luminescence toward the Romulans. The light exploded like fireworks, dazzling them and temporarily blinding their advance. "Now!" Douglas shouted, seizing the moment to flank them, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The ensuing skirmish masked the chaos of the assault. From the flickers of fire, the echo of urgency melded into harmony. They moved seamlessly, crisscrossing, their battle responding to an unspoken language forged in the heat of conflict. The ceremonial hall of the Andorian embassy was illuminated by thousands of twinkling lights, set against the backdrop of an aurora-like sky that reflected the anticipation and anxiety brewing within. Douglas stood at the center of the grand space, adorned in a robe that blended earthly fabrics with Andorian motifs, a symbol of unity for this momentous occasion, the culmination of days filled with tension and uncertainty. Around him, the Andorian attendees, essential leaders from various factions, held their breaths in anticipation. Their faces, painted with colors that shifted subtly according to their emotions, showcased a range of hopes and fears. In contrast, Douglas's heart raced with the weight of the moment, his mind a swirling vortex of conflicting thoughts. Despite the radiant atmosphere, an undercurrent of foreboding lay thick in the air, fueling his unease. "Today, we embark on a path that intertwines our destinies," Douglas proclaimed, his voice resonating through the chamber. He glanced at Fornax, who stood slightly behind him, her luminous blue skin glowing fervently in the hall's ambiance. Her eyes flickered with admiration and fear, a complex tapestry of emotions that mirrored his own. "Let this ceremony signify not just an agreement, but a commitment to peace." He gestured toward the elders, the gnarled leaders whose wisdom marked them as guardians of tradition. They nodded solemnly. One in particular, the revered Elder Terran, adorned with intricate tattoos that symbolized his lineage. Terran raised his voice, a gravelly instrument that demanded attention. "While we welcome the Earthlings into our hearts, we must also brace ourselves for the storms that loom." The crowd shifted uncomfortably at his words, the excitement of the ceremony giving way to the unsettling echoes of reality. Suddenly, a sharp alarm pierced through the hall, shattering the fragile ambiance. The lights flickered ominously, casting elongated shadows against the ancient stone walls. Douglas felt his blood run cold as he locked eyes with Fornax, whose expression shifted from apprehension to steely determination. "Stay behind me," Fornax commanded, her stance protective as she assumed the role of shield. But they both knew the danger that loomed. The Romulans, notorious for their stealth and aggression, sought to obliterate these fragile ties between Earth and Andor. As thuds resonated from the entrance, the crowd's panic surged. Douglas's heart pounded mercilessly against his ribcage. "We need to evacuate the delegates," he shouted, working to keep his composure. He could feel the weight of their lives resting on his shoulders, and in that moment, the stakes became painfully clear. Fornax grasped his arm, her voice urgent yet soothing. "We must channel this confusion into a defense. If we can hold them off, we can protect the unity we fought for." With an explosive burst of adrenaline, they turned to face the chaos swirling towards them. The doors burst open, revealing a team of Romulan soldiers, clad in glimmering armor that reflected the lights like ominous apparitions. Their leader, a figure whose sharp features were complemented by a sleek, dark cloak, strode forward. "Stand down, Andorians, your time for alliance is over," he bellowed, eyes narrowed. Another Romulan, a sinister woman with a scar cutting across her cheek, brandished a weapon. "Your fragile peace will shatter before our might." The tension in the hall ignited. A ripple of fear escalated throughout the crowd as pandemonium ensued. Fornax stepped forward, her voice rising above the cacophony. "We will not yield." Douglas, emboldened by her bravery, called upon his diplomatic instincts. "We mean you no harm," he shouted, hoping to reach the fraction of humanity hidden beneath the armor. "This is a celebration of peace. Let us talk." But the Romulans sneered, contempt etched on their faces. The tall leader raised his weapon, and for a fraught second, time slowed. Douglas's heart raced as he prepared to leap into action to shield Fornax. But she was already a step ahead. With incredible precision, Fornax launched herself at the assailant, her movements fluid as she struck with a fierce combination of force and agility. A swift kick sent one of the soldiers tumbling backward, while Douglas, seizing the moment, rushed forward to assist. The air thickened with tension as they engaged the Romulan soldiers in a fervent dance of combat. The room erupted into chaos. Alien energy weapons crackled through the air, illuminating the imposing stone structure as blaster shots ricocheted off the vibrant walls. Douglas, maneuvering with unexpected grace, ducked and rolled to avoid incoming fire, his focus set on protecting the people around him. "Move to the left! Form a barrier!" Fornax shouted, her voice cutting through the madness as she led the charge. Douglas worked alongside her, recognizing the strength of the alliance they had built over countless discussions and shared fears. Each blow they dealt was not just a strike against their attackers. It was a declaration of their commitment to peace. "Keep pushing. We need to reach the exit," Douglas called out to the fleeing delegates, who were overwhelmed with terror. A mix of fear and disbelief etched on their faces. The leaders, once so resolute about forming an alliance, now clung desperately to whatever hope remained. As the skirmish intensified, Douglas exchanged frantic glances with Fornax, their bond melding into an unspoken understanding, a synchronous rhythm cultivated through adversity. She darted to Douglas's side, her determination intoxicating. "We need to distract them," she shouted. With a nod, Douglas hatched a plan. "On my count, 3, 2, 1. Together they launched a cluster of makeshift weapons, a table, a ceremonial dagger, anything they could wield toward the advancing Romulans, diverting their attention long enough for them to create space. "Go! Get the delegates out," Fornax commanded. "I'll hold them here." "No," Douglas protested, the anguish of her sacrifice lacing his words. "We can fight this together. Trust me," she insisted, her eyes fierce. With one powerful maneuver, she blocked an incoming attack, giving Douglas the opening he needed. He didn't hesitate any longer. He turned and led the charge for their safety. They fought their way through the hall, adrenaline mixing with fear as blaster shots whizzed past them. Just when it seemed they might escape, the Romulans' leader charged forward, rage propelling him. "You cannot escape this destruction." Time slowed again as Douglas felt the air thickening around him. In an instinctual response, he turned to protect Fornax, who was now facing him, an energy pulse shooting from his direction. "No!" he yelled, lunging forward. But it was too late. As they stood atop the high cliffs of Andor, Douglas and Fornax gazed down into the valleys below, where the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of gold and lavender. The splendor of the awakening world contrasted starkly with the violence they had just endured. It felt like a cleansing, a rebirth of hope after the storm. "Today marks a new beginning," Fornax said softly, the wind catching her silvery hair and carrying her words like whispers through the air. Her expressive blue eyes reflected the newly emerging sun, giving them an ethereal glow. "We fought together, and it's changed everything." "Yes, it has," Douglas replied, a sense of gratitude swelling in his chest as he looked into her eyes. The turmoil of the previous hours ached in his bones, but a sense of victory now pulsated through him like the heartbeat of the universe. "You showed me what it means to stand for others, to be a beacon of strength when all seems lost." He took a step closer, the tendrils of their connection threading with every shared moment. There was a history forming between them, etched in the chaos they had weathered. They had faced the flames of adversity, and it was in that crucible that their bond solidified. The path ahead remained uncertain, but even within that uncertainty laid vast potential. They had emerged not just as diplomat and ambassador, but as allies in every conceivable sense, partners woven together by shared trust and purpose. "Look at how the light transforms everything," Fornax exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder as she gestured towards the vibrant landscape awakening below. "It reminds me of the transitions our own worlds are experiencing." Douglas followed her gaze, observing the way the light illuminated the rolling hills and lush forests. "It's as if the dawn itself is our ally, signaling that hope is always possible, no matter the darkness we've faced," he said thoughtfully. Fornax nodded with conviction. "And we must carry that light into every conversation, every culture we engage with. This dawn reflects not just the end of a battle, but the start of our true journey as collaborators." Quote. "Collaborators?" Douglas questioned playfully, a smirk spreading across his face. "You make it sound like a new partnership of galactic proportions." With a hint of mischief that danced in her eyes, Fornax quipped, "Perhaps we should write a joint manifesto? The Earth-Andor Accord. One alliance, one future." The two of them chuckled, their laughter echoing against the cliff face, as echoes of hope persisted in the air. But underneath the lighthearted banter, Douglas felt a weight shift within him. The long path of cultural negotiations, the tension of the political arena, and the recent brush with death had deepened his understanding. "Fornax, this isn't just about our peoples anymore. This is personal. The stakes are higher than we imagined." "You're right," she stated, her expression turning serious, her eyes penetrating his. "The Romulans won't stop. They will seek to undermine our efforts at every turn because they fear what our union represents, a unified front against their impending chaos." Determination flared in Douglas's chest. "Then we will be ready. We must reinforce our defenses, not just militarily but culturally. Let the Andorians and Earthlings understand one another and see we are more than just alliances on paper. We are a community, stronger together." The wind picked up, encircling them in a dance of shifting elements. As they stood atop the cliffs, their resolve solidified. Looking out over the vast clouds that kissed the mountaintops in the distance, they saw more than mere vistas. They envisioned a future built through relentless cooperation and support. "Let's ensure our next visit to Earth is one of unity," Fornax suggested, her tone enthusiastic yet firm. "Together we could organize exchanges, cultural festivals, shared missions, scientific endeavors. Engaging our citizens from the ground up creates a bond far more potent than any treaty." Quote, "Imagine what our children could achieve, unshackled from the burdens of our past." Douglas's eyes sparkled with excitement. He envisioned bustling markets filled with both Andorian delicacies and earthly cuisines, laughter ringing through the air as citizens mingled without prejudice. Fornax beamed, energized by his earnest spirit. "We could explore a new age of discovery that transcends our individual histories. There's so much knowledge yet to exchange, so many stories to tell." Their minds raced with the boundless possibilities, yet they knew that even these moments of vision required hard work to materialize. "Our next challenge will be rallying our respective worlds. But we're not alone. We'll work together," Douglas affirmed, his voice like steel, brimming with confidence. "Unity and transparency," she echoed, her voice strong. "Through every festival and gathering, we'll craft a narrative that drives us forward, one of hope, of possibility. Our message must be clear. Strength lies in togetherness." Just then, a small flicker of movement caught Douglas's eye. A flock of luminescent birds soared through the sky, a mesmerizing spectacle of color that intertwined and danced against the backdrop of the awakening sun. They soared boldly, gliding on invisible currents, and for a moment they encapsulated the essence of what Douglas and Fornax strived for: freedom and unity. "Look at them!" Fornax exclaimed, pointing at the radiant display. "They represent the very harmony we seek, the power of diverse beings flying in the same direction." Douglas nodded, inspired by the sight. "If only our leadership could emulate their grace. Together, we can exemplify this harmony. We can light the way for generations to come." "I believe we can." Fornax met his gaze, and in that shared moment, they grasped the enormity of the task ahead. But it wasn't overborne by fear. Instead, an unwavering sense of hope and determination fused between them, shimmering with every thought of what lay ahead. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the once shadowed valleys, they stood firm, fortified by their intent. "No matter what challenges arise, Douglas, we must remain steadfast, committed to nurturing this alliance," Fornax urged, her resolve echoing the urgency of their mission. "I won't let it falter," he vowed, his voice resolute. "Every step we take will be towards education and understanding. This is about more than just politics. It's about the hearts of our people." And as they stood together on the precipice of change, bathed in the golden glow of a new dawn, Douglas and Fornax knew that the battle for peace was one they were committed to winning. The first steps were laid that day, and with every dawn that followed, their alliance would rise anew, a guiding star for both Earth and Andor, bridging centuries of division with a luminous promise of shared destiny and endless potential. As they turned to leave the cliffs, a sense of completion washed over them, yet the great adventure lay ahead, and perhaps in that shared journey, they'd learn even more about each other, about trust, and about the cosmic fabric that held their two worlds together. And so, hand in hand, they descended into the valley below, ready to face the countless challenges ahead, remembering that strength lies not in isolation, but in the connection forged through courage, understanding, and empathy. If you liked this story based on real events, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like it. Here you can dive into a different reality every day, where anything can happen. Comment below what kind of story you would like to hear here. Thank you very much for your attention. We are the Sci-Fi family.